engineering, construction. We can talk about enforcement. I can talk about maybe the physical nature of the road as it exists today, as it has existed moving forward. So I'd like to consider myself impartial. I know the town hired a consultant that helped them put the engineering plans together. I used to be in consulting. I have over 20 years of experience in engineering and construction. Over half of that has been with the county. We as a county, the town was successful in getting this grant. I think that, for the town to say no to this funding would not be a fiscally wise decision to make. I mean, the road is in terrible condition. It needs improvement. It probably needs improvement more than this grant is able to improve it, shall we say. We helped the town out, gave them some advice with their application. We put out the traffic counter that collected the traffic count data, so I'm very familiar with the data that the traffic counter collected. As that indicated, when we set up the counter, our counter, it's somewhat smart in that it's as smart as we tell it to be. So we can extract out of it not only the average speeds out there, but we can also specify by direction. When we get the information out of the counter, we look at it, make sure that the information makes sense. So when we looked at the data that it spit out, it said that basically traffic coming into town was going 56 miles per hour. That's the 85th percentile speed. That means 85% of the cars, and that's like kind of an industry. It sounds like you did some of your own research and investigation in terms of some of these traffic statistics and everything. So in the traffic industry and engineering industry, 85%, the 85th percentile speed is basically, when you do your traffic count, you're looking, what is that 85th percentile speed? It's what 85% of the cars are doing approximately. And basically, industry says that whatever 85th percentile speed is what the speed limit should be. Now, coming out of town, now just hold, I share with you just let me finish. So, coming out of the village here and going, into Waukesha County, it's going 50. So that's still in excess of 45 miles per hour. Do those numbers make sense? I would say that they probably make sense, and that traffic coming out of the village is probably going slower than traffic coming into the village. I would hope people would think that that makes sense.
That makes
now,
sense. It's downhill.
Ed and I spoke earlier today, and I told I'm familiar with the road, but I wanted to have it fresh in my mind. So right before I came here, I drove the road. I drove it. Actually, I came into town. I drove it out of town at 45 miles per hour, this posted speed. I drove it back into town from the Waukesha County line, and I tried to stay at 56 miles per hour as much as I could without getting pulled over, so there was nobody there. And I will say, trying to be impartial. I mean, it just blows my mind now, having driven that road at 56. Whatever the people, and obviously there's a large percentage, and actually there was a person coming at me that I'm sure was going approximately the same speed as I was going when I was going 56, and those people are crazy. I mean, it is not safe to be going that speed on that road, which is why the speed limit isn't 50. So when I said before, general practice says that whatever the 85th percentile speed is, that what this posted speed limit should be, then there's the but. The but is engineering judgment needs to come in and say whether that really makes sense. So being an engineer, I haven't done a formal engineering study. We did a count, Ed and I have had some recent conversations based on, the letter and the petition. I mean, by all means, I'm not here, even though the data says, that the average speed is 50 to 56 miles per hour, absolutely unsafe, absolutely not. It should not be at that. However, excuse me, having driven it at 45, see, I think definitely what you're seeing, is there a speeding problem on that road? Absolutely. The data proves it. They're going 50 to 56 miles per hour. I mean, I feel just in driving it tonight, when I drove it one direction at 45 versus driving it the opposite direction at 56, that 11 miles per hour made an incredible difference. I feel that if there was a way that you could, program everyone's vehicles that everyone was actually driving 45 miles per hour or less, I mean, I feel that you as residents on the road would feel somewhat safer than what you're experiencing now at 50 to 56 miles per hour.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you. I live on that road, okay? You're absolutely right. Inbound, it's hell bent for election. The problem is, as I live there, because I can't see,
Yep.
okay, because there's a blind hill,
Yes.
okay, that is about as dangerous as
Yep.
it gets. By the way, my name is George Murphy, by the way. You're taping me, that's
What's
great.
your last name?
Murphy,
Thank you.
like Sandra's husband. So anyway, I go out there and I look one way, I gotta put my windows down both ways because I can't hear the freaking cars coming, okay? And when I'm telling you, and he's right, 56, that's modest in some days. I've been in the last...
Yeah, that's 80. Yeah, there's people going more than that.
In the last 3 weeks, I'll put my hand on the Bible, okay? 2 people have passed me on that road coming out of town. Passed me on that road. And I'm not an old coot that's doing 22, 18, 17 miles an hour. I'm hauling it pretty good at the speed limit. The other thing is, in some of those signage areas, you can't see the signs coming into town because of the overgrowth. I can only reach up so high, I'm only, like 5'10", right? I can't get it done. So there's some things that we can do. The other thing, and the last thing I'll say is perhaps a sign that says, when you come in, beware of hidden driveways. Because if you're, all the way down to Dorner's, or maybe further, most of the driveways you can't see until you're like right on them, And I'm out there, 2 or 3 times a year, I'm trimming because my wife and I, we pull out, we got to stop, we got to listen to the cars to see if there's somebody coming over that hill on Veely, right there by Veely Road. So I thank you for that.
And I will say to your point, and you kind of were segueing into something else I was going to say. So, even at 45, like I said, you could throw, what's the right amount of money to improve this road? Right now, I mean, the funding or the approach that the town is taking, it's more of a rehabilitation. I mean, when I drove it, there are a couple of dipsy-do curves. It's like a roller coaster out there. Absolutely. And so, like representing the highway, when we start out with a project, and some of our projects are rehabilitation projects too, but when we have the opportunity to actually reconstruct a road and do it over from scratch, I mean, we've had county highways where, believe it or not, we've taken down those roller coaster hills 15 to 20 feet because of that same phenomena. Now, I don't think those hills need to come down 15 or 20 feet, 5 or 10, absolutely would make a huge difference. There are definitely huge visibility issues out there that so I'd say generally speaking, I felt comfortable doing 45, but at some of those roller coaster hills, 45, even at 45, that's not safe. I mean, there's something known in engineering practice as a design speed. So what the design speed is, whatever you're going to set your speed limit out there. So basically, if that road, the speed limit's 45 right now. When you design all those hills and everything, you have to make sure that you're designing it to a design speed of 50 miles per hour, which is 5 miles over the speed limit. So what that's saying is, somebody, if they're exceeding the speed limit by up to 5 miles per hour, that they would still be safely traveling that road. I mean, right now, there is no way that somebody could safely travel over those hills at 50. So that the existing, the road is right now currently like doomed by, what was built, years and years ago. So I mean, over those roller coaster hills, I mean, 45 isn't safe. You had mentioned the suggested speed. I mean, the engineering term, it's an advisory speed. So the black and white signs out there that have those are the enforceable speed limit. The suggested speeds, as you had mentioned, they're advisory speeds. Those aren't enforceable by law enforcement. I mean, those are basically advisory speeds warning the traveling public that those are the speeds that you should be going around these curves. If you exceed those speeds, you're probably going to be in the brush. So, I mean, the road certainly has issues out there. The project isn't going to, basically being a rehabilitation project, can't fix all those issues. So I think there's certainly other opportunities that can be. I noticed the same thing. He had mentioned that there's overgrowth of the trees you can't see. So there are, just annual maintenance, vegetation type issues out there to make sure that the signs are visible. One thing that Ed and I just talked about today, I had heard, getting the mail is unsafe. So, I mean, I don't represent the post office, and I'm getting brought into this, in terms of the whole, what can we do to work with the community, to hopefully all get on the same page, hopefully still improve the road, but also look out for the safety of the road. I mean, I think, and I don't know what the post office would say about it, but I'm just wondering, could they change the mail, could mailboxes be relocated? Could they change their route so that, the residents on the road wouldn't have to cross the road to get their mail? I mean, I can't promise that. The post office may say no, but I mean, I think that would be one thing that could be looked at.
I could look at it, and I'm thinking from Chuck. The only thing that strikes me is, in the short term, okay, it's a major highway into town. Let's face it. It is. It's a major influx into town, period. In the 70s, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't here. I only got here in 2004. All I'm saying is, maybe you put signage down by NN there or something that says, like you do for the horse park, say, next 2 miles, hidden driveways. So these are stopgap measures, but it may have some impact on some of these people. Put signage on as you do that where I call it the Peacock Farm, right on the corner there. When you come down through there, maybe you put a sign there that says beware of hidden drives. Okay? Or radar enforced, or whatever the hell you want to say. But definitely, since I've lived here, the truck traffic has increased tremendously on that road. It's tremendous. And if you put in a road, and I used to be in the transportation end of it, you get those guys with air braking down there, and that new road you're going to put in is going to get trashed. Mm-hmm. Okay? So you got to do two things. You got to let them know they can't do it, okay, without penalties, because they don't want to pay a $10,000 fine and lose their CDL. If you go down that road, maybe you put a sign. Now, coming out of town, it's more of a sloping by Dorner's there. It's kind of a slopey, straight, that sort of thing. And it kind of a launch pad, I guess I'd say, where you start going from Dorner's up and you really haul ass and pass me a couple of times. Or, you start at the other end where it's just going to hit that road that goes up, and it's a blind hill. It's a total blind hill. And, I was kidding Chuck the other day. I said, if we had a police car and I put it down in where the Tower Road is and they got that little alcove in there, I'd probably fill my ticket book in about 3 hours. Fill it full. Because these people are hauling ass through there. So, I don't want anybody hurt. I've had, there's been 2 accidents there since I've lived there. They've been not very pretty. They've been flipped over trucks. And right in my driveway, literally, a flipped over, pickup truck, and there are kids in them, and they just don't give a shit. So, I mean, the road is one thing, okay, and that's going to get trashed if we don't manage the semis. And then the other thing is personal safety. Got to have the personal safety. Thank you. I'm sorry.
And I will say, I mean, like I said, I agree that, simple measures, inexpensive measures like the hidden driveway sign, it might not solve everything, but it could help. I'm a bicyclist and a runner myself. I mean, I live more in the Economwalk area, so I don't bike and run on these trails all too often, but I have. And just whether I do or I don't, I mean, just being on a bicycle, being a runner on trails and crossing roads like that, I mean, I totally get what you're talking about there, and that's something that Ed and I have talked about. And I don't ride horses, but, I get that aspect of it too. I mean, Ed and I talked earlier today in terms of certainly, and I think, to me, I mean, I think certainly even a part of Little Prairie Road could potentially, because if I'm not mistaken, I know I looked, and once you cross into Waukesha County and it becomes what, NN?
County NN, yeah.
So NN, I believe the speed limit heading that direction is 50 miles per hour. So it does step down currently to 45, but then I believe as you enter the village, it does step down again to 35, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, because you have runners or hikers and bikers and horses, I certainly, in my opinion, I certainly think that there is some validity in at least extending the 35 further out of town. I mean, I feel that maybe a portion of Little Prairie Road could stay 45 closer to the Waukesha County line, possibly. Some things Ed and I have talked about. I mean, I think certainly with the horse trail, with the bike trail, with the hiking trail, and things of that nature, I mean, I think Little Prairie Road may be a good candidate to get a rustic road designation. And and with that, it's been many years since I've gone through that, but I have gone through it before on a road similar to that. And I mean, that right there, gives, the ability to lower the speed limit. But I will say, lowering the speed limit, even though the black and white sign, let's just say the whole thing gets lowered to 35. Just because there's a black and white sign that says 35 miles per hour, I mean, if they're not abiding by 45 right now, I mean, we don't know for sure that they're going to abide by. So, I mean, again, and I'm not trying to, throw Sheriff's Department under the bus by any stretch of the imagination. We work with them, almost on a daily basis. But a sign alone, I mean, I just don't want, the residents to think that if we do this, it's going to be this comfortable blanket that's going to, like, protect us all.
No.
I mean,
it's a stopgap measure.
Yep.
Oh, I think we understand that, but at least I think you understand there is a problem.
Oh, yes.
So,
I mean,
that's
I said,
what we wanted to get across.
I will say, the other thing, when we set up the counter, we can also determine the number of truck traffic, the amount of truck traffic out there. So, I mean, I couldn't believe the speeds, I couldn't believe the volumes, I couldn't believe the truck traffic for a town road. And there was 18% trucks out there, which even on some of our county highways, that's high. When you're saying like almost 20%, almost 1 in every 5 vehicles is a truck. Now, you got to take that with a grain of salt. This is Jefferson County. We're very rural. You have the horse park right there, so a lot of it's probably horse trailers. A lot of it could be farm equipment. I mean, I know some of it's that too, but I mean, I'm sure there's got to be a good portion of it that is horse trailers, and some's got to be ag. But I mean, 20% trucks, it's high. So I mean, and the one other thing I will say, the funding that the town received for Little Prairie Road, there was an economic development, shall we say, commerce type component to it. So I have reached out to the state. Like I said, I don't want to see, I mean, not only Palmyra, but any of our communities lose out. I mean, all of our dollars, especially in these times, are getting stretched, thinner and thinner. So I don't want to see whether it's, we as the county or any city, town, or village within our county, lose any potential money that they're getting to improve their infrastructure. So I have contacted the DOT to see if something were to get put in place, like reducing, truck traffic, reducing speed limits. I just want to make sure that that's not going to jeopardize, the funding before the project gets completed. I mean, one recommendation, the guy I talked to at DOT, he's like, I can't make that call either. There was a whole board that made the decisions in terms of what projects got selected for that funding. They're meeting again in October, and they were going to maybe look at this issue. I guess my recommendation, to the town, to the residents would be, let's not, send this money back. Let's improve the road. Because we don't want, people's vehicles to start, all of a sudden, boom, you're damaging your vehicles because the road's in such a state of disrepair. Maybe let's fix the road, and along with it, maybe after that, let's try to put some of these other measures in place to not only improve the pavement, but to improve safety as well. But I just want to make sure that, we're not jeopardizing the funding, before we improve the road. But like I said, I think there's certainly safety measures that you know, we can do, but it, you know, reducing the speed limit, but some of it might have to be after the fact potentially. And the
But my
project's not even, the
understanding
project now is probably not going to even go till next year anyway.
My understanding though is that the grant has kind of strings attached where we can't change the speed limit or the class.
It doesn't say anything about the speed limit.
Okay, but we cannot change the class limit, so we
well,
cannot
that-
eliminate
I
semis
sent a
if we
letter,
take this.
I sent a letter to WISDOT to the meeting that Brian just mentioned, and they won't determine anything till October.
If this does go through, we do spend the money, get the road rebuilt, repaired, what have you. What's our preventative maintenance going to be on that road from here on out? Because I think that's a big issue why that road is deteriorating right now.
Yeah, and I guess
The
one
road
thing.
hasn't had anything done to it for how many years?
That
I
if you
chip
look at
sealed it.
if you look at the number one cause of blacktop deterioration, it's water.
And yeah, and you got a lot of areas that are shady, the water can't
That
evaporate.
sunlight and water are number one and number two. Shade has nothing to do with it.
Shade that allows the water not to evaporate.
Well, to a point, but the sun also breaks down the flexible oils in the blacktop that then cause stress cracks.
The other thing is it never gets plowed.
That's
And that's
so
and that's
exactly.
the thing, like, we have semis coming down the road at 45 to 60 miles an hour in the middle of winter when our road is the last one to be plowed ever, and like we've had it sit for a day.
I came home from a 20-hour plow route, and it looks like it was plowed once. I've been out for 20 hours plowing commercial lots, and it was plowed once. I could barely get through the road in my truck, a 10,000-pound truck, brand new tires on it, could barely get through. And which leads to my next point. All that heavy traffic and all those semis, 18-wheelers, coming through that road that are pushing all that snow and ice that isn't being plowed off, that's watered asphalt. The number one deterioration in blacktop. So if we're gonna be spending tax dollars on this, how are we gonna make sure this road lasts us a very long time? Because this one's, I've only been here since 2012, so I can only speak for a few years, but it is god awful. It is terrible. I know, Ed, you're just a punching bag, and I understand it. We can only do so much, but we gotta either allocate more funds to the town, and it's not just Little Prairie, it's all the town roads. They're terrible. You go to Hooper, you go to Tamarack, they're all terrible. And so we gotta do something.
They're not
If
all
we're gonna,
terrible.
what's that?
They're not all terrible. There's
Well,
some that are.
They're all mediocre. So if we're gonna spend the money, and we're gonna be paying for it, we gotta have some preventative maintenance in place before this happens. Not, hey, we got a new road, now let's figure out what our PM's gonna be. It's too late. So that's all I got.
And I will say, you know, no town road is designed to withstand the truck traffic. So, I mean, to keep that road in good condition, I mean, part of it's maintenance, part of it is, you know, having the right traffic on it. And I mean, obviously the horse trailers, you know, deserve to be there, you know.
Yeah.
With ag being, you know, what it is in Jefferson County, you know, they probably did, but I mean, some of the semi-traffic, I mean, I think that's maybe an issue. I mean, if there's industry on that road, I know there's some businesses on there. I mean, they got to get, but I mean, I don't know. Can they come via 59? Are there other ways that, you know, we could work with those
That's what I was
businesses?
suggesting. All this traffic comes off of County NN,
Yep.
and it comes off on the Little Prairie off of Highway 67. Why cannot we run that truck traffic down a county road, County Z, which is designed for semis, it's built for semis,
So
run it
that,
down to 59 into Palmyra. It's 3/4 of a mile. It's not a big sacrifice.
so there, I think, but and then with that, I mean, there's, you know, there's, when it comes to projects like this, they call it the 3 E's sometimes. There's the engineering where I come into play. There's the enforcement where Sheriff's Department may come into play. And then a lot of times there's the education standpoint. You know, sometimes it's educating, you know, the public, but then there's also working with, you know, maybe the business owners. And then, because, you know, it's like, I don't know who's driving the trucks. You know, you don't know who's driving the trucks. But it's, you know, working with those business owners then and say like, hey, this is where, you know, your, raw materials are coming from, or your products going out or going to. Like, can we work with your truckers to like say, hey, take these roads instead of saying,
I don't think they're gonna care.
well, they might not, but we got to at least try, right? I mean,
And to be honest, I don't think Palmyra is big enough to take that many trucks in every day. I mean, there just isn't that much commerce in this town. I think a lot
like
of
you
these
said,
trucks are just going through.
GPS is telling people where to go, and I mean,
Correct.
we can, like I said, all we can do is try through the business owners and say, hey, could you work with us? And maybe, but at the end of the day, a trucker is going to do what he's going to do, and
Absolutely.
maybe follow GPS. But you got to at least try, right? So
Truckers run mostly what we call gypsies. And they're hired by the broker to take a route. They may not be down that road for 6 months.
yeah,
Okay, or a year, or 3 months, or 3 weeks. There's very few truckers, major league truckers like Schneider and some of these guys that you see every day on 94 that would take a route, a delivery order into a small area. So that you're using gypsy riders, gypsy truckers, nothing wrong with them, but they use brokers to assign their next goal. So if they're not familiar with Palmyra or that road or Little Prairie, that sort of thing, they don't care.
Nope.
They got to get down to Pal Steel, drop their load, and get the hell out to Iowa. That's their game. They do it.
Nope.
I mean, every day.
Nope.
So to have a businessman try to convince a driver who he may not see for 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 days, I don't know, is tough. That's a tough
I don't disagree. I'm just saying, it's something that could be tried.
That can be tried, yeah.
Okay, I think I've said my piece. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything about Little Prairie Road. I know your time's precious, but
The bottom line is, if we don't fix the road, it's gonna go to hell. And if we do fix the road, we're gonna have more of the issues you got now.
and it's going to go to hell. After
And
the
it's gonna
trucks
go to
there.
hell eventually, sooner than later probably.
So are we really accomplishing anything?
Well, what Brian and I also talked about was if you waited a year or two and let everything, get it all paid for and that, and then make it a Class B highway. I mean,
People
but
could
it,
die before that, Ed. I'm sorry, but
yeah,
could be
you're
me.
talking. I understand, Chuck. I went with you. I looked at the driveways. I looked at Healy Road. I asked Brian to drive out on it. I don't know if he did.
I didn't. Well, I drove up and down.
I mean,
the
you
road
can't.
and tried to-
George is right. You can't see
Oh no, I mean it's
on
just like,
Healy Road, and that's the first one we have to mow every year with the grass, because that's even worse.
Yep.
I just
But
assume
I would
it's
not
spent-
be doing my due diligence if I did not fix that road when I got that kind of money to do it.
I understand where you're coming from, Ed. I would just as soon spend the money on fixing some of the intersections instead of repaving the road myself. I
But
think.
it was a project. It was for that project. I couldn't use it anywhere else in the town. It was just for Little Prairie Road. So that money, if it didn't go to Little Prairie Road, it goes back to the state.
Well, then the only way I see to get trucks off the road is to make the speed limit 35. Maybe that'll route their GPS someplace else.
it could have a ripple effect that once the speed limit gets programmed into the GPS algorithms, it would by having a lower speed limit, when they plug it in, it'll take longer to get that. It's possible.
I mean, to get people to drive 45, you might have to lower it to 35.
The other thing you can do is figure out what time of day, like the majority of traffic is coming through at those high speeds, and then call me. You call the sheriff's office, you say, during this time, we've noticed a lot of trucks coming through, we'd like a vehicle here.
7 or 8. 7.
Yeah, 3 to
Right.
6 at night and at least 6:30 until at
There you
least
go.
8:30 at night.
So you have something for us to go off of where it's not, come spend all day on Little Prairie. well, that's not feasible. But if you give us a time frame, we can do that.
That's only part of it though, because the truck traffic is all throughout the day going 56 miles an hour, and if I want to go ride my horse down the road, and there's a good chance it could be cream, and they're hauling ass.
Well, now the high schools are using the mountain bike, the hiking trails for their long distance running.
It's not, there's not an easy solution just to have you come out and patrol. We appreciate it and we want to see you in our community, but it's a systemic thing. We need to fix it, like, and try to fix the whole problem. So, change
Will you,
tracks,
will you
change
stop
the-
traffic that's going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit?
Yeah.
The one
They
thing.
may not get a ticket. They may just get a warning, but they're getting slowed down, and then you have the visibility that there is the sheriff's office on that road, and then enough people keep seeing that over and over again, and then they get it in the back of their head that, oh wait, this is that spot where they like to hide, and then they slow down. It sounds really dumb, but that's
Well,
how it works.
One other thing that I forgot to mention, I was looking through my notes to make sure I didn't even actually have this in my notes, but I remembered it was one thing I wanted to mention, and that Ed and I talked about earlier, I think today. I talked with a gal from DOT about today, is maybe some of you have seen in like speed trap type areas, there's those flashing boards
Yeah.
that flash your speed at you. So Ed and I talked, it's like, if I knew that those were successful in getting people to abide by the speed limit, I would make that recommendation that maybe that's something that gets implemented here. I did ask this gal from the DOT that I talked to, she's like a traffic safety engineer. I said, have you seen any studies that indicate that those are effective? And she was going to look into it. I haven't heard back from her. But, I mean, again, it's another tool that could be, you know, helpful. But, again, if there's no statistics that prove that it's, again, it could be helpful, but is it going to solve the problem? I don't know.
Can we make this a rustic road before we get the grant?
Again, I think,
That would fall out of the scope.
like I said, the DOT's kind of checking on that for us. I just feel like that possibly, I don't have that answer right now. They're looking into it, but I feel like it's possible that it could jeopardize it if we try to do that before. And I will say, it's not like you snap your fingers and it becomes a rustic road. I mean, that's a process in and of itself. And I mean, it can be done, but I mean, it's not like it's going to happen in a month. I mean, we could put the wheels in motion, and I mean, that might not, you know, get pushed through until next year. But I fear that if we do it before the project's complete, it could possibly jeopardize the funding. I don't know that for sure, but
Just because it's free though doesn't mean it's good.
Exactly. Free is
Well,
not
like
always good.
Most times free isn't good.
But you don't fix it at all, and that's not good either.
What's that?
If you don't fix it at all, that's not good either.
I honestly, and this is just me, and I drive big trucks that have terrible suspension, and I think there's only a couple spots in Little Prairie that are that bad. In all honesty,
Very true.
I would fix the spots, put in a PM, and leave it. It's not that bad. And hey, maybe it slows people down.
No, did that speed bump slow people down by your house? Chuck?
I'm sorry, Ed, I couldn't hear you.
When they put that, when that stuff settled by that culvert, did that slow people down by
Hell
your
yeah.
house?
I had to drive like 5 miles an hour in my truck and trailer.
You could hear the ones that didn't slow down.
Sure could, if it'd shake our house.
Yeah, you can see in the bottom.
Can the speed limit be lowered before you get this improvement money?
again, it kind of goes hand. If you designated a rustic road, I mean, generally the
Does it have to be a rustic road to lower the speed limit?
doesn't have to, but I mean, I think it's helpful to.
Well, it seems everything is going back to they're driving too fast, so why not slow it down?
And again, I mean, it's kind of this vicious circle.
I mean, you can put up the
sign-
flashing sign that tells you you're going too fast, but if it's 35 miles an hour, it's going to ring truer than if it's 55. They're not going to slow down if the speed limit's higher. I mean, I'm only asking a question. I don't even live there.
But and at the same, I mean, it's like I said, right before that, I mean, I drove it at 45, and I mean, it's like, obviously, so someone living on the road, I mean, slower is always going to be better. I get that, but it's like I just, as a motorist on the road, when I drove 45, and also, you know, with the roller coaster hill, you know, paid attention to the yellow advisory signs. You know, when I drove the speed limit and paid attention, I mean, honestly, I felt safe driving it the way it was. But the problem is, it's like obviously the data shows that people aren't driving responsibly out there.
Well, we all know they're already going to go over the speed limit anyway, so just back it off some. It seems like an easy solution if we can do it.
And but again, it's like, and we, you know, like I said, it can be lowered, but I mean, it'd be interesting. Let's just say we lowered it tomorrow. It'd be interesting to, you know, come back in 6 months or whatever, you know, set up the traffic counter again and see if it is effective or not.
But if you lower it, that's when we need to let the officers know.
Then
they
we're getting
come
regular
out
stop
this,
tickets, not
and
speeding
then
tickets.
that's how that works together. It's not just one, like, okay, put in a new sign. Okay, some pick up. No, it takes effort from multiple
Oh,
people.
and I get that, but I'm saying, you know, and even without even reducing the speed limit further, I mean, it's like if we put a flashing board, if we had hidden driveway signs, you know, if we had law enforcement out there more, I mean, it's like if we tried to do all that stuff and it got to 45, I mean, you may see that things are, I mean, it's not going to be maybe as better as if you could get everybody to 35, but I think things would be, you know, remarkably better even if you could get everybody down 11 miles per hour.
It'd be great if we could get everybody 11 miles per hour down. But,
Officer, you've
I
driven that
also-
road, obviously. What do you feel is a safe speed?
So I usually drive it at like 30, just because, well, it's because there's deer, there's people, there's things like that, and I have a higher obligation to avoid any kind of unsafe measures, so I don't have a good answer for you. No, I mean, it's, and like backcountry roads, I don't go over 35, 40. That road, I don't go over 30, but it's because there are hidden driveways and I know that they're there. So I don't want to hit somebody in my squad car because now you've got angry cop just smashed into local citizen. You know, town is outraged, and then I'm just sitting here going, you know, what do I do? So I don't test the limits of the road to see how comfortable I am. I can tell you that if somebody was running from me and they took off down that road, have a good day. Like, you know, good luck. I'll wait and come pick your car up 5 minutes later after you wreck. So I don't have an answer for that for what's comfortable.
I will say this too. I mean, with the exception, like I said, there's the roller coaster hills that are unsafe, but there's 22 feet, 21 to 22 feet of pavement out there. I mean, there are a lot of town roads out there that have speed limits of 55 with like 16 to 18 feet of pavement that are way more unsafe than Little Prairie Road is. I'm just, you know, I don't want to play devil's advocate. Like I said, at 45 miles per hour on that road, with the exception of the, you know, some instances with the roller coaster hills, I mean, it's like if people would abide by 45, I don't think that's a completely ridiculous speed limit.
I would love if you had some time and take you for a drive like Ed did and show you some of these driveways. I think,
Well, and it's-
actually, when you drive down the road, you really don't get a real feel for it until you pull out of some of these driveways and some of these intersections. Because you just kind of zoom by there and it's like, oh, it's just a driveway.
But there's,
You pull
I mean,
out
it's-
of it, it's,
there's a lot of other things. I mean, there's vegetation. I mean, we've had a relatively wet year. I mean, there's vegetation all over the place that also makes visibility, you know, pretty nasty out there too. That, you know, so there's other things other than speed limits and dropping down roller coaster hills that I think, you know, could make things better out there as well.
Ed, we don't have the contract from Payne and Dolan yet, right?
No.
Okay. Is there any reason why we'd even take any action on the contract right now?
The only reason I put it on there was so for the future Larry could sign it, we could all agree on it then, and all he'd have to do is sign it then.
Right. Feels like this is something we should table and revisit. We don't have the contract yet. We haven't seen it yet. We don't know what it says yet. And obviously there's some issues that could probably be explored here between now and the next board meeting.
Yeah, I'm fine with it, I don't care.
I believe that's all we're asking, is you to look into it, so.
It's not gonna be done this year anyhow, so it doesn't matter. If we wait, it won't be done if it gets done till next year.
I understand, but that's why we're talking
It's
about
not
it
a
now.
problem to wait.
Do we stand to lose out on any benefit if we table this for another month then?
Nope.
Okay.
And I will
The only
say,
reason I brought it up was Chuck sent the letter and that's when he did it, so.
the fact that the DOT committee is reconvening, you know, sometime in October too, I mean, we may have more answers back from the DOT, you know, some more advice from them for the town that may be helpful in a month as well.
So could I move to table then until the October meeting at least?
Yeah, I don't care.
Second.
The moving second to table it.
Any more discussion?
October, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no, motion's carried, table till October.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Doug.
Can't you see?
Great. Could write somebody a ticket. Right? I might actually go down there. Feeling a little sporty. Thanks for coming out. Thank you guys.
Bug lights are on. Discussion and possible action on accepting Chris Miller's resignation as the Palmyra Municipal Airport Manager. I have a letter from Chris Miller. It says, I, Chris Miller, resign from Palmyra Airport as manager on this date, effective immediately, dated 8/13/2020.
Make a motion to accept this resignation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept Chris Miller's resignation from Palmyra Airport Manager job. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of Bob Zural as Palmyra Municipal Airport Manager.
Bob's not here, he's down in Florida, but he said he was willing to try it till December and see how it goes. He was the first volunteer in line. So I'd make a motion to accept his,
Okay.
to
Appoint him.
Are we accepting this till December or what?
I would say the contract ends this time next year. So I would say this, accept it till the end of the contract.
Put that in your motion.
I make a motion to accept Bob Zural's appointment as airport manager till the end of his contract, which I believe is August or September of 21.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Did he say aye? Okay. Motion, okay. Opposed? No, motion's carried. Discussion, possible action to appoint Leslie Ott and Kristen Fleming as poll workers.
I move we accept Leslie Ott and Kristen Fleming as poll workers.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint Leslie Ott and Kristen Fleming as poll workers. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, motion's carried. Discussion possible action regarding WISDOT reimbursement for closing of tracks on Lowland Road.
Well, we didn't get the check back yet, so that's another thing we might as well table for another month. We have to get the check back and send a picture of it, send a copy of the resolution, and I have to send a letter stating what we're gonna use the money for.
You wanna put that in motion to do that?
Table.
Table it.
Is that a motion?
Yes, it's a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to table the reimbursement, for the closing of tracks on Lowland Road. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? No. Motion's carried. Discussion possible action on what Eddie Miller was told about the canopy by the town building inspector.
Well, obviously, you talked to the building inspector because he recommended putting posts in. And the other thing was, he mentioned it should have been a licensed electrician did the electrical work also. building inspector told me.
Any more discussion? Discussion and possible action for state municipal agreement for Little Prairie Road.
That's just something you have to sign and send in.
It's an amendment, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's something I sign and send in. Adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Meeting's adjourned.